Hello and welcome to another Physiofriend talk. This is Kris from Physiofriend, a physiotherapist, and today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of breathing, and breathing correctly, should I say. So this is something that we do every day, but something that most of us are unaware of, how we've changed our breathing patterns from a young infant to an adult. And I just want to talk to you about the proper way to breathe and some concepts behind breathing, so to better inform you and say so that you can change your quality of life. So when we look at breathing, we've got to ask ourselves, why is breathing, and breathing correctly, should I say, so important? We know why breathing itself is important, but we might not be aware of how we've, over the years, even in human history, how the nature of our very breathing has changed. And breathing, importantly, can have such a significant boost, add vital energy to your life, whereas breathing badly can even rob us of our youth and even rob our lifespan, the amount of years that we have on this earth. So when we look at breathing, we have to, when we put in contents, we can go months without food, we can go weeks without water or drinks with water content in them, but most of us can't last minutes or even up to a minute without taking in the breath. There are some people, by way of likely genetics and likely because they live in certain climates. I know there's a group of people from Asia, small village that actually live on the sea, and they can actually go underwater and hold their breath for 5 minutes or a little bit longer, and that's because they're best adapted to that environment. But when we look at most of us can't last even up to a minute without breathing. So we know that breathing is the most vital, most important thing that we can do. Luckily, it's a involuntary process because I suppose if we had to remind ourselves to breathe, then most of us will be in trouble. But yeah, when we look at breathing and the function of breathing, you breathe in either through the nose or either through the mouth, and that air goes down our windpipe and into our lungs. And at the level of the lungs, this is where the oxygen in the air we breathe, crosses over into the blood to be pumped around the rest of the body by the heart. And when we look at the process of breathing itself, it is a very natural, rhythmic process. It's like the ebbing and flowing of the waves on the beach. And this is especially so when we are at a state of peace. However, when we're at a state of disharmony or dis-ease, so dis-ease or disease, which is dis-ease, our breathing can become very irregular. Times when we're angry, times when we're fearful, our breathing patterns change. And the ancients always thought of the breath as being the mind, and when we breathe properly, which is deeply, slowly, we can feel time around us literally, take a step back. Time literally seems to be going much slower. And that is important, because when we look at practices like Tai Chi, all the movements are done with the breath. So let's briefly talk about the benefits of deep breathing as opposed to other forms of breathing which we now do. So in fact, let's talk about the shallow breathing first, when we look at shallow breathing, which most of us do, and it's because, most of us are tense. We hold stresses in our body, our muscles are tense. And when we breathe shallow breaths, we're actually breathing on the top portions of our lungs. Now, the negative effects of that is our lungs are never fully expanded, so the oxygen capacity of the lungs has greatly diminished. So most of us and our bodies are basically forever in a acidic state, because we got the build-up of carbon dioxide within our body, and because we haven't breathed deeply and exhaled, as well deeply, we get that build-up of the carbon dioxide, which places our body at an acidic state, which also makes us more prone to things like disease. And when we breathe in deeply, we allow the full capacity of our lungs to be filled. So when I say breathing deeply, this is also what we could refer to as belly breathing. Breathing to an extent where we breathe in and fill the very bottom of our lungs, and then breathing out. And it's only when you take in a very deep breath is only the time when you can fully exhale. When you take in a short breath and then try and fully exhale all the build-up of carbon dioxide, it's going to be very short. So another benefit of breathing, as well as filling our lungs with basically filling our lungs with oxygen, is it allows us to massage all of our internal organs. So as we breathe in, and the diaphragm, which is like a muscle right at the bottom, which separates the chest cavity from the abdomen, when we breathe in fully, the diaphragm pushes down on our organs, and this allows it to massage the organs. So when we think of massage, we're always thinking of massaging externally, but when we look at massaging internally, massaging the organs, which also has what the Chinese would refer to, ancient Chinese medicine will refer to as qi. It allows the qi to be stimulated. It allows, all the toxins that build up in the organs to be released. And that's why breathing deeply, you will feel great. You will feel good after it. So that's another benefit. So I'm just going to tell you about an experiment that I done back in late 2019, not so long ago, where and before I go into it, we have all the evidence around us, all the books that will tell us the importance of breathing, all the yogi masters or whoever, they will tell us all the great things about breathing, but it's only when you practice it yourself do you know it full extent. There's no better teacher than practice and repetition and perfecting and evaluating these things for yourself. So going back to my experiment, what I done is I spent one day whilst working a very, very long shift. It was a 12-hour shift, treating patients, practically massaging them all day. It was one of my long days of the week, and it was a day where I should have been absolutely knackered and by the end of it. But I done this experiment where I was breathing deeply, and the hardest thing was to be conscious and always constantly aware of my breathing throughout that 12-hour shift. And at the end of that shift, where I would usually, and this was in the middle of winter, so this was at a time where I would usually be even more tired because of the cold and the darkness of winter. And I was so invigorated, I had so much energy, it was unbelievable, and I felt so great that I had to call a friend and share the news to them, because I had never ever felt better and especially after working such a long shift. The next day I done a different experiment, and it was basically drinking plenty of water in that day. So that day I wasn't focused on breathing at all, but I thought, okay, if I hydrated myself for, the whole 12 hours, so it wasn't the next day, it was actually the next week, and if I hydrated myself, I thought, okay, so yeah, let's see if I will feel better as a result. And it was nothing compared to the day where I was breathing deeply and had moderate water intake, but nothing as much as in the next time I was doing the experiment. So, there's always, we get into a state with the breathing where we become connected with our mind. And with that connection with the mind, it's like the more you breathe deeply, the more relaxed you are. It's like the waves of your brain. I know you got to quote me on it, gamma delta waves, and I think it might be the delta wave which helps you to rest a little bit more, become a little bit more aware. But whatever wave they're called, it did feel that was controlling my aura, that was controlling my electromagnetic field, where I was just calmer from breathing deeply. And there's been other times where I've just focused on the breath in moments and everything slowed down. And when, we look at situations where we've been put in, whether they're situations where we're in immediate danger but can maintain a certain level of calmness. There was one time where I was on a bus, and the bus, it was just crashing through the rails. It was, luckily it didn't hit anyone, crashing into a wall. And I remember that time because I was already in a meditative state, already breathing deeper. And what was surprising is there was no fear from myself at that time. And I think the biggest thing that was on my mind is, what on earth is this bus driver doing? That was just my first immediate thought, because I was so calm and it just came out of nowhere, which wasn't the right thought, but it was something I was thinking at the time. And because I was already breathing deeply, I could see everything happening around me in slow motion. People flying off their seats, the crashing, the noises, but I was still very, very calm during that state because of the breathing. And one thing I always tell my patients, especially at the time I was running falls prevention classes in the NHS, and I would always tell them, you're either in a state of fear or in a state of being relaxed, and you can't be fearful and breathe slow and deep, nor can you be in a peaceful state and breathe shallow and fast. It's either one or the other. You're either afraid and you breathe fast, or you're calm and you breathe slower and deeper. So one way we can control our emotions just from practice is changing the way we breathe. When we're in anxious situations, trying to breathe slow and deeply, because eventually the mind will follow. So I understand where the yogis and all the great teachers of the past say the breath is mind, because you can literally control your mind just by breathing. So just as a practice, what you can do to start breathing deeply, just placing the hands on the stomach, placing the hands on the chest, and then breathing deep so that the hand on your belly rises a little bit. You can do this about 9 times or 10 times, and you can even hold your breath for a good 3-5 seconds or longer if you can. Just make sure you consult someone before you do this, and if you're getting dizzy, you definitely need to stop. But I leave that thought with you. the mind is the breath is the mind is breath, as the saying goes. I might be mixing it up a little bit, but it's one of those sayings. But yes, I wish you a great week and focus on your breathing.